If you like FPL, you'll love FPL Premium.
Whoa, stop.
If you're like me, you love a bargain. You don't like paying premium for anything. You want them players as cheap as chips. So today, I will be your financial advisor and bring to you a no premium players draft just to show you... What was that? Just to show you how strong of a team you can actually have without ripping a massive hole out of your wallet for a player. Before you judge my team, before you make me self-conscious about this draft, I have some extra points to make as we go through. So let's go through. Starting with our goalkeeper. With a man down under, it's 4.5 milli. Matty Ryan. Mr. Potter looking to cast some spells as the Brighton manager again this season. They do have almost enough defenders to field an entire 11 backline right now, so this season could see Ryan get even more clean sheets for Brighton, while still needing Ryan to do a bit of diving towards them balls, where he could also get the save points too. That is actually a good point to make here, where the premium goalkeepers sound like they'll be good because they'll get all the clean sheets, but without them having to make saves, it probably means they won't get bonus points either. Where also, it's more likely for goalkeeper to get bonus if the team scores less, as goals are worth more on the bonus point system, meaning the lower scoring games, the higher scoring keepers. Moving on to defence. And this is where we start to ask those questions. How much is premium? How much are we willing to splash out on the cash without breaking the FPL bank? I'd say now with Trent at 7.5 million, I think we can stretch and say 5.5 isn't quite premium for a defender, but hopefully with these players, their points returns will be premium. Starting with the most expensive one in my team, it's Kieran Tierney. The Gunners will be hoping Tierney will be a gun himself this season, shooting back and forth, contributing to goals and clean sheets. I feel like this could be a very good season for Tierney, and maybe he can bank some of his own FPL points to actually get a proper kit bag, no longer Tesco carrier. Now we all know Trent is like insane value and will get a lot of points, but how many do you reckon Tierney could get? If it's say only 20 to 30, maybe even 50 less than Trent, then is that 2 million actually worth it? Now I still think Sir Trent should be in everyone's team, but Tierney, very sexy value in my opinion. Moving on to our next defender in Eric Dyer. Yes, I know, wait a second. I also, at the time of making this video, Doherty, that Irish fella hasn't quite moved to Spurs yet, but that is looking like it's really happening. And if that happened, Doherty over Dyer for an extra million easily, but that ruins his draft, so we'll ignore that for now. Now, Dyer can have some quite dire performances at times, and then other times he's just climbing up the stadium instead of actually being on the pitch. But he's probably one of the safest 5 million defender options, with his name being penciled into the team sheet before any other player under Mourinho. Also under Mourinho, teams are usually quite a lot better defensively, especially after the restart. They had some of the tightest games, squeezing out all of the points of them too, which we hope Eric Ladd could also do. Especially their fixtures defensively are very good, very nice at the start. Moving on to two 4.5 million defenders, a double whammy, Amazon Prime to your face. I'm going for James Justin and Vinagre. I think it's always important that your defenders from lower clubs, especially not well known for clean sheets, are at least attacking in some sense, so that if the clean sheet isn't secured, at least they can still get points. Well, like Dyer is okay, because even though he's a centre-back, he loves getting on that ball. Pretty sus if you ask me. But I've chucked two budget defenders here right now, because I think there's quite a lot of decent options going around, especially at their price, and it is unclear right now which ones will be better. I would also put in a Burnley defender, yeah, I know, bold, right? With the likes of like Charlie Taylor, but they don't have a first game the first week, meaning they're all blankers, so I've gone for these two. So that is it for the non-premium back line. Now, if this was an actual defence, it might be worse than Norwich's abysmal excuse of a defence last season, and that's really saying something. But 5 players done, only costing 24 million. Hey, that's pretty good. Now, before we move on, we could have a really premium line up the top of the pitch with this weaker defence. But that's not the point of the video, so let's move on. Moving on to the middle of the field, also with our middle price options, I would say the non-premium barrier for midfielders is heavily up for debate. Like, where do we draw that line? But with the super high-end Aubameyang and Salah bankrupting us, literally daylight robbery with their 12 mil price tags, I'm going to draw the line at anything below the double digits of 10 mil is good to go here. Starting with Go on, my son! He had the most FPL attacking returns he's ever had last season, whilst also now being a lower price than he was last season. He also gets 1 extra point for a goal over Kane being a midfielder, as well as getting those clean sheet points too, which are very likely to happen in Mourinho's bus. And he is also cheaper than Kane. Oh, this all of a sudden turned into anti-Kane propaganda. My bad, lads. But for his price, I think Son is a great option, but also not premium, aye. Moving on to another popular pick, it's Mr. Hakim Ziyech. We may be calling him Mr. Hacking Ziyech if he goes and gets all the goals and assists next season, but at 8 million could be a very, very good pick straight away. I think the only reason for his lower price tag is just because he's a new signing, instead of his rating of his actual quality. And if he can convert that quality to this league, that is a lot of points delivered to you, converted from a small fee. Finishing the midfield with, okay, listen to me first with this one, okay? It's Willian. Or Pepe, whatever one tickles your pickle. Now I think 8 million is too expensive for a Willian at a new club, and it's hard to see if he's going to start all the time, when maybe he and Pepe will share minutes on the right, or maybe both turn into flankers having a flank each. But if he or Pepe does really nail down a spot, they could also be a great cheap alternative to Aubameyang, which isn't going to get you near as many points, but is 4 million less, so not bad. Now, let me have a chinwag with you and let's discuss this midfield. So you can all agree, this is not the best looking middle line at all. We've got players that on their day could score quite a lot of points, you know, and it's also not entirely impossible that all of them haul in like the same week, but you aren't expecting them all to haul in every week, as they are probably cheaper for a reason. So that is one point I'm trying to make here, especially in the midfield department. A Willian or Pepe probably isn't going to get you the Aubameyang points, and a Greenwood might not get you as many points as Bruno, but there is only 100 million in the bank. No one knows which of the premium players will be of great value, and no one knows which of the expensive players will return a lot. So it is up to us to make a decision of where we go cheap and where we go expensive. But just remember, you can't have them all. So balance is key. More points to be made with the entire team and premiums as a whole. But first, the forwards. Now, the forwards here have put me in very much of a pickle, a sticky pickle which I can't get out of. I would consider anything more than 9 million a premium forward, as the most expensive is the Kane and Aguero at 10.5 mil. But I would like to put big man Tony Martial here, but I didn't want any blank game week players in this draft, as even though I'm not using this as a potential draft you might use, but more of a talking point on players and premiums as itself, but I didn't want to discombobulate you and I didn't want to confuse you all. So I'm just looking out for you guys, alright? So just listen to my points first, okay? Starting the front line with Raul Jimenez, scoring more and more every year. He may not be getting those hat tricks, but he sure is a consistent striker that gets goals every now and again. So you don't have to worry about his form and fixtures as much, as you'll just get some over time. He's also on penalties in a Wolves team without Europe this year compared to last year, meaning he could potentially have the best season he's ever had for Wolves. A pretty good option for his price. Next to him is the daddy himself, Daddy Ings. 1 goal off the Golden Boot last season for him, and he only just started to take penalties at the very end of the season. So if we see him take more and more penalties, are we going to see him score more and more goals? Where last season he managed to hold 22. 8.5 million might look like a steep price to pay, saying that he did start last year at 6 million, but with the goals he can score with that record, he is still very much worth it at that price. Finishing the team with Richarlison Dino. Not a player I've heard many people talk about this year, where I think people are turned off by the fact he's now classified as a forward, when most FPL managers have a real fetish for attacking midfielders. But he scored 13 goals back-to-back in the league, where now under Ancelotti, he's been targeted to score more and more. And who knows, he could do it this season, also whilst going under the radar. But let's have a look at this team. You are probably thinking, alright Bacon Boy, why on earth are you showing us this team? Yeah, there's some alright players here which could get some points, but it just seems so weak. And I say yes it does. But there's no really weak links in this team. There's no 5 million midfielders playing for a poor club that could maybe get 1 goal in every 5 to 10 games. There's no promoted striker that is a risky pick. They are all pretty good options. But there is good news, and it is big boy good news. With the cheapest bench possible, which is what I usually suggest anyway, you would still have, are you ready for this? 9 million in the bank with this team, when there's no real weak links. Now that could be any two of these midfielders upgraded to a top-notch premium. It could be the entire back line transformed into the Liverpool defence. Or it could even be two of these strikers upgraded to Kane or Aguero. But let's, for example, use that 9 million to not just upgrade one or two players, but spread it around the entire team to see what we can get. And I've come up with this, where now we have Trent, Doherty, Werner, Bruno and more, still with no weak links in the squad. Almost all of these could be amazing options in bad fixtures, and you don't need to wait for their form, where the budget cheap enablers, even in good fixtures, could be pretty bad because realistically they're not as good. Again, I'm not really suggesting this squad, and that's why there are some blank Game Week 1 players here, but I'm just using it as an example of how much you can actually spread your money around your team. But what is the main point I'm trying to make here then? The point I'm really trying to say to you is, you don't have to have weak links in your team to have a good squad. I see some people having two budget midfielders in the starting 11, or even the cheapest 4 million defender just to get those premium players in. Where yeah, the premium players will probably score points, but the weak links in your team are not. Where those kind of players are probably only going to get like 1 or 2 returns every like 5 or 10 games, and is that worth it? Also, usually, doesn't mean it will be the case this time, but usually you'll get more points with a balanced squad overall throughout the year. And as I discussed further in the set and forget strategy video I talked about before, where last year you could have won FPL with 0 transfers or changes, and that had a very well-rounded squad and not many premiums in it at all, as that squad was full of really top players but not at the top prices. Like an example of spreading these funds could include like a Salah and Charlie Taylor becoming a Son and Trent instead. There's been debate about these kind of price swap comparisons, but I think the thing you should focus on is making sure every million you spent is actually put to good worth. To ensure you have a great squad, pay attention to where your money is going. But counter argument is, the expensive players are expensive for a reason and probably will score the most points. And also they are usually the most safest captain options as well, as they are more likely to return on paper. So this is not a plea to not get any premiums, just don't try and fit in like 5 premiums and have the rest of your squad really bad. But also it is important to try and find those cheap, really valuable players as well, like the Greenwoods and Ings last season. Like the players are great value that could maybe accompany you to get in more premium players. But sometimes that is really hard to discover right at the start of the season. So you could just call this a social experiment, a rethinking exercise of how you spend your money in FPL. I personally don't like to try and gamble on too many cheap players right at the start, as the cheap but good options can usually be discovered a lot easier later on in a few game weeks, meaning we can swap those in and then maybe upgrade in other places. So a few premiums in your team, a few cheap later discovered gems is a good way to set up, in my opinion, and with that you should be good to go. Now remember with FPL though, there isn't only one way to play to get you a lot of points to win, as it all depends on how the players actually perform in real life, and it is all very unpredictable. No one can 100% predict this player will score more than this player for every player in the game, because it's all based on real life and you don't know what could happen. So another point is sometimes it is better to go for the safer options at first, because, for example, if you splashed out all your cash on 3 or 4 premiums, the most expensive but exciting players in the game, and then one game week, they all blank, you are then relying on your cheap players to score you points, otherwise you scored nothing. But if you change one of those premiums and one of those bad players to 2 great players in between, then that could be a lot better. But also, it might not be. And it could just come down to who you fancy having in your team and how you like to play this game anyway. I personally prefer to have 2 top premium midfielders or forwards, then maybe a premium defender, but then the rest of the squad nice and balanced. Also aiming to have no bad picks in my starting 11 on paper in my team. So that is it. It has been fun to look at, definitely has adjusted my thinking a little bit for trying to go for all of those premiums, as there are still some great cheaper options. Thanks for watching. I hope this maybe helped you a little bit. If not, well, at least maybe we had fun. Well, if not, then that's just, I like it! But thanks for watching, and remember...
Don't be a cheeky scrub. Subscribe to Nathan Bacon right now.